Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today I'm joined by Chris McIlwain, and we were just saying there, it was one of those games that if you lose, and it's happened before, after you've won the league on Trophy Day, and you go on to further success, if you go on and wrap up that treble, no one remembers today. But James, so what I'm saying there is that, you can almost park it, but then James Forrest comes on, and what happens when he scores? I'm going absolutely berserk. I'm going berserk when he scores, Chris, because it's Jamesy. The meaning behind. Look at him. I mean, what we're going to do, obviously, we've both got the game footage, the post-match footage running in the background, and we're going online. We'll get to the game. We'll get to speaking about the game because it wasn't great. I think James Forrest breathed new life into the Celtic team when he came on, Chris, didn't he? I mean, we looked like a different animal when Jamesy came in.
I couldn't believe the difference he made. The game. I mean, losing the goal, is just a sucker punch. And look, it's a nothing game for us, right? But as we know, when you support this club, no game is meaningless. You want to win every single game. So we'll lose the goal. And we're not playing well at all. I think we looked really toothless, is probably the way I would describe our performance up to that point. And you're looking for that impetus, you're looking for that inventiveness, and so Jamesy comes on, and he never, every single season, he never ceases to amaze. That he gets better and better with age, I think. And he came on, and he was the driving force for us getting back into the game. And if you have to take a draw, that's the way you'd have taken it, right? And that's made a draw feel like a victory. It feels now like a title celebration, because I think the one thing that we'd have wanted before the game, if Jamesy was playing for the start or coming on, was, can he get his goal? Can he get his goal? And by God, he did. But what he did prior to that was try and get a goal for just about every other player in the park. I mean, the crosses he was putting in. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Ryan or Sean, I think said in the group chat, said, Adam Ida must be sitting there on the bench scratching his head and say, why am I not getting those kind of crosses when I'm playing? Because Jamesy was trying to lay it on a plate for everybody. No, you know what? The whole team deserve the celebrations for what they've done this season. But today, Jamesy should be getting accolades front and centre for what he's done. Not just this season, but was that 16 seasons in a row he's scored. And by the way, his contribution this season has been so much more than just the goal, as it was last season. I think he was the player we needed last season to help us get over the line. And I think he's shown again this season that he is still a really, really valuable player, and certainly a club legend in his own right.
He is a legend. I'm glad you said that, right? Because if we rewind to any of the kind of episodes throughout this 8 years, there has always been divided opinion on Jamesy Forrest and his status at this football club. Now, last season, it looked as though his career was kind of teetering out at Celtic. He became surplus to requirements. And Brendan Rodgers has said just this week that James Forrest and Adam Ida were the two players that he thought, got us over the line last season. So let's not forget his contribution in the last campaign, the double winning campaign under Brendan. And then this time round, he's come in and, his movement is definitely that of a younger man. He doesn't look like, with his advancing age, and by the way, I know he's only 33, but in terms of I know, wait till Monday, top flight football, a lot of these players are able to adapt to the pace by maybe getting further back on the park. They change their position and they adapt as footballers. But when you're a player like James Forrest, who's an out-and-out winger, who relies massively on his pace, you think to yourself, he might burn out and that'll be the end of it. I never seen that today. I didn't see that today. Maybe he's an impact sub. Maybe he's the last half an hour in the game. But I tell you something, what he brings to the team is energy. And I mean, he laid on Maida on a plate. Half time we're hearing about Engels and we're hearing his transfer fee and all the rest of it. Dice Maida was rotten today as well. But what happens, Chris? Players don't play outstandingly well in every single game. Maida has got plenty of credit in the bank. He should have burst the net with that header.
Oh, he should have, yeah. What a chance. Look, it wasn't a good performance today. Let's not try and polish it up. It is what it is. It was a poor performance collectively today. Lots of our top pros didn't really turn up. We lose a poor goal. We look, as I said, really toothless for the bulk of the match. Not going to single players out. It's not a day for that. That has happened. It is. I think what we won today was what we've been trying to win for the last few weeks and months, is to try and get that James Forrest goal to honour the legend that he is, and he got that. But he, by the way, he did it himself. I mean, what a performance to come on like that. And I agree with you. He's not the electric pace that he used to have is not there. Seems to have been passed on to Johnny Kenny, by the way. What a run he had. But what Forrest has developed in his game for me is intelligence. And I spoke at half time. I said, I want to see more direct play. I want to see someone, pick up the ball, drive it forward, and make something happen. And James Forrest said, "Hold my beer," and off he went, because he was phenomenal when he came on. He really changed the game. He dragged the team with the scruff of the neck, dragged us up the park. He was an out ball. He was the main creative force. He was terrorising the St Mirren defenders, and every time he was on the ball, you could just feel that anticipation that something was going to happen. Even if it wasn't going to be him scoring the goal, you felt as though he was going to be the catalyst for us to get something from the game. And look, overall, a draw was probably a fair result, and I have no idea if that means St Mirren are in Europe or not, depending on other results. But what I would say is, if did they not make it? No. A shame, because I actually like Stephen Robinson, and the team worked hard. So commiserations to them. But they were certainly, I think, possibly the better team today. But sometimes you just need that clash. You need that something special, and that something special today was James.
Absolutely. And what I like about the James Forrest goal, maybe I shouldn't say like, is that you're going to have some of these comments coming through pre-goal, and some of the knee-jerk reaction pre-goal as well. And I'll need to look at that, because I think it's one of the ones where, listen, let's look at what Celtic have achieved this season. Celtic were not, I'm not even going to say great, they weren't even good today. They were really quite poor.
Absolutely.
And when I'm watching a game involving Celtic, I focus on Celtic. But let's not forget the part St Mirren played in Celtic being poor. They stifled us. And we knew they would. And that you're talking about admiring Stephen Robinson for what he does. So do I. I don't like his style of football. I mean, it would be murder if he was the manager of Celtic or a team that wants to entertain. But he has found his level with a club like Motherwell or St Mirren, and he's able to get a level of performance that can frustrate. And they did frustrate. I mean, Celtic had all the possession, all the passes, but we couldn't create a chance. We weren't creating enough chances. We had one shot on target moving into, I think, injury time. We only had one shot on target. So that's what St Mirren did in terms of being our opponents and stifling it. Celtic were not good today, but let's not chuck the baby out with the bathwater. Let's not go on about an upheaval or a rebuild in the summer. Let's not throw Adam Ida in the bin because of today.
No, of course
seriously, this is the kind of comments I'm getting in the comment section, and we will bring it up. I just think we need to be realistic today. We were poor. The gaffer will work on that all week. But let's be honest, right? If we had been beaten today and we win the Scottish Cup final, nobody remembers today. Yeah. Nobody remembers today, Chris, right? Really? What it does is if you put in a poor performance before the cup final, you start saying to yourself, right, has this player maybe played himself out of the start 11? I think that's more of a discussion. I think the players, you were going on about pinpointing players. Look at the substitutes at 53 minutes and ask yourself about the three guys that have gone off, Bernardo, Ida and Kuhn, whether or not they're going to start in the cup final. I think it's fair to have that discussion. I'm not going to tear it up and throw it in the bin just because we were 1-0 down for 90 odd minutes against St Mirren. Let's celebrate the title. Let's celebrate what Jamesy did. Let's celebrate the fact that it's a generation of domination. And I would look at those three players who I thought the three of them were stick-ons to start in the cup final. Now I'm not so sure, Chris.
No, I think there's one big element that could change that starting lineup, and I think it is James Forrest's performance today. And in fact, his recent performances, I think he's been one of our most creative players. And depending, who you would leave out, I would certainly say there's James Forrest is pushing for a place in that starting lineup for the cup final. So I think that's an easy one to look at. The others, I mean, it depends what you do. Arne, I really feel for him today. I think he wasn't getting great service today when he was on. He certainly wasn't getting the James Forrest level of service that we spoke about.
At half time,
yeah.
Chris, it was the wingers that we pinpointed, mate.
It was. At the same time, and I've said this before, and I said it even when Kyogo was playing that position, I think when you're not getting yourself involved in a game, not necessarily through your own fault, you have to find a way to impose yourself on a match. And I'm not sure Adam did enough of that for me today. But like I say, this is a one-off game. I'm very happy with Ida's contribution this season. I think he's got to be, gets a full pre-season working with Brendan. I think he'll become a really good player. I think it was promising Johnny Kenny today. Kenny is showing certain qualities and attributes, to throw in my favourite word, that that I really like. The pace, the fact he's got a bit of dig about him. It doesn't matter what the size of player he's up against. It doesn't mean pushing him off the ball. He's got a wee bit of a nasty streak in him as a striker, and I quite like that from Johnny Kenny. So maybe food for thought there. And he was unlucky not to get a goal. I thought he did very well with the minutes he had. And Yang, I mean, hey, listen, I might be on the Yang gang now, because what he brings is a level of energy to the team that I'm not sure any other player does at the moment. Now, the end products can be wildly one end of the scale to the other. Sometimes it can be absolutely brilliant. And, today's overhead kick goes in, for example, and you're thinking, my goodness, who is this guy? And other times you're thinking, my God, this boy's won a raffle ticket to get to the team. But again, I think he's got a part to play, if not necessarily for the start. The guys who are under pressure, Kuhn and Engels, for me. Engels, I think, has done well this season, but I'll never pull Engels down because of a transfer fee. I don't think today was his best game. I think he's had a few of those this season. I also think he's had some tremendous games, and I think you can see the potential. You can see where his career's going. I think if Hatate was playing, would Engels, be a shoo-in for the cup final? Possibly not. I thought Bernardo did okay. I thought McCowan did all right when he came on as well. But with Hatate out, I think Engels is nailed on for the starting lineup in the cup final. And I think I actually probably prefer he got his rough performance out of the way today, and he doesn't have it against Aberdeen.
I think there is no doubt who the first three picks in the midfield would have been for Brendan Rodgers in midfield, and it would have been Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor, and Arne Engels.
It's a big mistake.
Paulo Bernardo and Luke McCowan have been on the fringes all season. Yep. Luke McCowan, for me, he came in. I didn't think he played well today. Luke McCowan when he came on,
and there's been a few times. Yeah.
But what I'm trying, the reason I'm bringing this up, right? Luke McCowan's done that a few times today. If Arne Engels does that, everybody's on his back. But Luke McCowan, £1 million from Dundee, Celtic fan, living the dream. It's a completely different reaction. And this is what I'm trying to say here. I can admit when a player who I've backed like Arne Engels has had a bad game, he was poor today. There's no hiding that. You could pull up the data and that will show that he gave the ball away far too often. There wasn't enough pack passes, etc., right? So you can't deny it. You can't put the green tinted specs on and say Arne Engels played well today, because he didn't. No, what I'm trying to say, though, what I'm trying to underline is that it's the reaction to a bad performance by Ida. It's a reaction to a bad performance by Arne Engels. We don't see the same reaction to a bad performance by Dyson Maeda. We don't see the same reaction to a bad performance by Luke McCowan. So it's all about perceptions and the reaction to that. Luke McCowan's a decent player. He's been a decent squad player for us, but he gets away with a lot of the criticism. I mean, he wasn't that great today. There's James Forrest coming on with the trophy. Let's focus on the positive. He doesn't like the limelight. I even remember when he was writing his book, we interviewed the author of that book, Joe Donnelly, the co-author who wrote the autobiography, and he spoke about how humble James was. He never ever really wanted to dig into the success and all this kind of stuff. He spoke about Neil Lennon and said he wasn't, after all these years, he wasn't even sure if Lenny still rated him. It was Lenny that gave him his debut and all this kind of stuff. He's a very humble individual. He's getting a special recognition award from Brendan Rodgers. He's obviously had his testimonial at the football club. He's still got a year on his contract. And I think he's surprised a lot of fans. You know what else? I think he surprised Brendan Rodgers. Because, when we were talking about guys that Brendan maybe didn't fancy or didn't think were going to be part of his team, and maybe Rio Hatate was one of them, I actually think James Forrest was one of them as well, but he's absolutely won over the gaffer, isn't he?
He has, but he's done it. He's not done it through anything other than his performances. I mean, his performances have been outstanding. I can see him there with Brendan on the park, and he's getting special recognition. But it, he's not had any entitlement here. This is a player who has knuckled down, been professional, done his job, and when he's been called upon, he's come on and done what he's asked. And that for me is everything you want as a Celtic fan. And Tony Ralston's got a bit of that as well. It's just be there when you're needed, come on and do the job well. I think Jamesy has taken his game to a different level. I wouldn't say he's taken to a new level. He's taken it to a different level where I think he's recognising his role in the team. I think he's recognising where he can have the most impact and add the most value. And I think he's recognised that, look, if I can't use this pace that I relied on for so many years, I have to use my brain, I have to use my intelligence, and I have to find a way to help the team win when the chips are down like they were today. And he came up with the goods today, and he's done that on more than one occasion. And for me, he is a player that until he decides to hang up his boots, I would absolutely keep him in the rounds. Now, look, the idea is the manager's going to want to improve the squad all over the place, and he's looking for long-term sustainability of success and that kind of thing. But you need that, trustworthy player to come in when you need them to, and maybe do the job that nobody else can do. And I think James Forrest fits that bill.
You need a core. I've always thought this at a club like Celtic. You need a core. It's part of the club's identity. It always has been for the entirety of our history, where you've got a core group of players who have come through the academy system. They've come through the ranks, if you like. They know what Celtic's about. They understand what it means to so many people all around the world. That's something that's difficult to implement in a player who comes in with no skin in the game. If you think about it, someone who is being purchased by Celtic, some guys buy into it, like I think Joe Hart bought into it. Others don't. Others, they're just here. It's part of their own football journey, Chris. And we don't like to think about it like that because we are Celtic through and through. But I think you need to have that core so that even if the standards start to drop ever so slightly, they're on it. I think James Forrest is part of that core group that we've got at the moment, as is Callum McGregor and as is Tony Ralston. And I'll tell you something, those jerseys are going up for auction, I believe. And I've got my eye on Tony Ralston's. I think that would look tremendous in my wee studio here at Acsom headquarters. I think I might just have to buy myself a Father's Day gift. And Tony's jersey, it'll probably just be me and Tony's mum that's bidding for it, right? So I'm going to have a look at the Brickies jersey.
That one.
And by the way, I'm not being negative in relation to the performance because it wasn't great or some of the guys. But I do think the biggest discussion point is some people might say, look, it's 90 minutes. Nothing that today was going to affect Brendan's decision for the cup final. And that's maybe right. Brendan's maybe already got his Scottish Cup final team written down. He maybe already knows what it is. But in terms of the performances, I wasn't really impressed with Bernardo. I think he's a very, very talented player. I really like him. I think there's a bigger part for him to play at Celtic, bigger than he has played this season. Adam Ida stood up for him all season, 20 goals. If you buy a player from that level in English football, that's the fee you pay. It's a lot of money for us guys. Yeah. But if Celtic want to buy a player from that division, that's how much you pay for him. Nicholas Kuhn, bit disappointed with him actually. I think that throughout the season we have seen what he can do, which makes days like today even more frustrating because we know that he's got it in the locker. He wasn't direct enough. He never played enough balls into the box. And James Forrest, at the age of 33, all these years down the line, is still our best option at right wing. Callum McGregor's got the trophy. He's flanked by his team group. Never, ever tire of these moments. I will never tire of these moments. To get to this point, you imagine the work, the planning, the energy, everything that goes into this, the emotion, the talent, everything combined that goes into moments like this. And there's Celtic using their legitimate and non-criminal flares. That's good, eh? And they get to do that on the pitch as well. There we go. So they're having a dance about. Rio Atati obviously isn't, but he's there. Yeah. He's on his crutches. Jota was on his crutches when we clinched the league title. And that's the only downside, You've got two big talents there, Chris, both injured. One of them won't be back. We know for sure won't be back for the start of the season. And that's the big worry for me. And I think that, Hatate one, there's obviously been big question marks around the tackle, the fact that the player got away with it, Gay got away with it. I'm going to have to put it out there today. I thought the ref was shocking today. It was all the wee things, all the small things. I said, Mirren player fell on the deck and, he got a free kick. Greg Taylor was taken out, no free kick. And I always look at these parties, if you like, the trophy day. And often, if you look through the years, Chris, there's faces in there that are almost unrecognisable, like very, very fringe players, third choice goalies that came in, Kaminar and all these guys, right? You look at that squad there, every single one of them is part of this team. It's a very tight squad, isn't it?
It's a good point as well. Yeah, that this is a squad that's won a title. It's not a team that's won a title. It's a squad that's won a title. I think the manager's really, at times, from an enforced standpoint, he's had to use the players at his disposal. He did come in with the intention of reducing the squad down, which I think is smart, because you want a core group of players there that you know and you can focus more on. But I think I just saw Benzo. But you can focus. The manager can focus his efforts on a real group of players and be a group of players that he can trust. I mean, look, there may have been other recruits he would have wanted to bring in, maybe for whatever reason didn't get them. But the fact is that I think every player you're seeing on there has played their part in some way, shape or form. And it's been great to see guys like Kenny and young McCarroll get minutes in the last few games. We'd like to have seen more of that, obviously, but it's they've came in and they've contributed, which is great. Yang has, what a turnaround in his Celtic career. I mean, before Christmas, I would have, put my house on him, being binned in January, and he wasn't. So credit to him as well for the work he's undoubtedly put in too. And as you say, the one we keep going back to, James Forrest, a guy who, no matter how many times you write him off, no matter how many times you think, right, that's it, the guy's got nothing left to prove, he can just, go and hang the boots up, and he comes in and you realise how much you depend on him. So, no, every single one of them deserve the plaudits today. Forget today's game. Today's game is an anomaly. Great romantic football romance finish with Jamesy getting the goal. But ultimately, this is a culmination of excellent work throughout the season by Brendan, his coaching staff, and all the players. They've done the supporters proud today, and certainly looking at the pictures, the supporters are doing them proud today as well.
Interestingly, Jimmy McMenemy scored in 18 consecutive seasons for Celtic.
Oh, so two more years, James. 2 more years.
James Forrest at 33, he's got another year on his contract. I always kind of like, and I know it's a different position and you can maybe play longer there, but I always look at Bruni, playing up to the age of 36 at the top level in Scotland. I know that there's a lot of other players who, as time has developed, growing up, Chris, 27, 28, there's just been a pitch invader, 27, 28, was like when people were regarded as hitting their peak. You always remember that, don't you? 27, 28. But now it's changed. There's a lot of players, and this is obviously down to the development of sports science, the diet, the nutrition, and when you consider also back in the day a serious injury could have wiped you out. These days there's better ways of treating injuries, and I think that when you look at some of the top players playing right into their 30s, not just at 32, 33, which was widely regarded as the age that you kind of wound up, it was an anomaly if you went beyond that. You see a lot of the top players playing right up to their late 30s now. And I'll look at Forrest, because he's position, he's not going to be up and down that park for 50 games a season. But, to hold on to that core group until we start bringing more of that type of player through, I hope that James Forrest does play for another couple of seasons. I also hope that, and I think that I'm pretty confident that Callum McGregor will play up until he's 35, 36 at Celtic. There was a question posed last night about who takes over the captaincy. Well, it might be a player who's not even in the team at the moment, because, Callum might still be around in 4 seasons. So these guys are absolutely pivotal. I'm looking around at some of the fringe players. I'm looking at Mike Nawrocki. He's a bit of a cult hero for me. Comes in, plays 3 games, turns up to the awards with a tie on. Just love the guy. But Johnny Kenny, you made a really good point. The one thing that I had been told about by Celtic fans who had watched a lot of him in Ireland was that pace, that blistering pace. And the way that he works the channels, and he's very good at that kind of side of him. You've seen him down the right wing quite a bit since he came on, even though he's playing through the centre. But the one thing nobody told me about was the fact that he's got a bit of needle. And he actually likes to mix it up a bit. You pointed that out today. So who's the hard man in the St Mirren team? Well, it's Gogic, isn't it? The big self-styled hard man. And he's done that job for Hibs. He's done that job for Hampton Accies. And he now does it for St Mirren. So wee Johnny Kenny, the wee wiry forward, picks him out and gives him a boot. I quite like that.
Yeah,
I don't mean to the point where you become a dirty team, but I sometimes think that, you need a wee bit of nastiness, Chris, in this game. And I like to see that. I don't know if Johnny Kenny's got a future at Celtic. I really don't. We are probably going to buy big up top again in the summer. There is always going to be interest around Dyson Maeda. So he might stick around because we need options up top. But if not, loan him out for a season. Give him more game time. He's proved for me today and in the 7 previous performances, he gets his goal during the week, obviously, that he deserves to be in the squad, Chris. But he might not get much game time if we bring in another striker in the pre-season. And if that's the case, I would loan him out. I don't know where, but I would loan him out.
Yeah, you don't want his development to stagnate. I think there's a real pity that he's not had more game time, because I would like to have a better look at him. He's, like I say, there's certain characteristics he's got that I really like, and I think pace as a forward is such a good, valuable asset. It really is, and I was blown away by the amount of pace, but the strength he had as well to put Gogic on his backside. And the referee, of course, he blew a foul. It was never a foul. It was just a forward using his muscle to get rid of the defender. And I want to see my forwards doing that. I sometimes think that's something that I want to see Ida doing more of, is bullying some of the back line a wee bit
using what he's got. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if he does that well enough. Whereas Kenny, for being a smaller player, has a better ability to do that. He can shift his weight and just get off the ball. I'm taking this, and I would like to have seen him had more opportunities to do that. Obviously, it's such a difficult challenge at our club, because the manager almost has to be risk averse to an extent. He has to go with the tried and tested.
Rio Tati is being buried by the ribbons. I don't know if you've seen this. Poor wee Rio, he's getting buried.
Good stuff. Yeah, you know what? I'm loved it. They all deserve it. But yeah, I think you're right. If Kenny's not going to be any more than a periphery player at the moment, at this point in his development, get him out on loan at a decent level. If we can get him out at a decent level, somewhere where he can go and he can lead the line, because I think there's a player there. I really do, and I've seen enough. In fits and starts that I think he could come in and make a difference. A lot of it will depend, as you say, on recruitment. We don't know what's going to happen in summer. Who's going to stay? Who's going to go? Who's going to come in? Get 2 top players that are out. Hopefully, Rio will be back for the start of the next season. Jota might be as late as January, and he's a great quality player. But we need somebody for the interim. That can come in. So definitely we're going to need to see a bit of refresh in the summer. Hopefully the manager gets the same level of backing that he had this season. And look, I think the players who come in this season, I always think a player takes at least 2 seasons till you see the best of them. We saw it for bulk of the season. We could as well, even though he's tailed off a bit at this point. So you're hoping you'll see that same bounce, if you like, from Ida, from Engels. McCowan may step the game up. Bernardo, back to fitness may step up as well. So there's a lot of good players and a lot of useful players in there for the manager to take forward. But you're right. We look at Dyson. Would love him to stay. Would give him a right arm for Dyson to stay, because I think he's tremendous. But he'll have clubs sniffing around him and want to take him. So
here's my point, and I brought it up over the last couple of weeks, Chris. Right. We have a lot. We've got loads of money in the bank. We've got tons of money, plenty of dough in the bank. And when you look at where we are in terms of the financials and what we have done over the last number of seasons, where we've worked the transfer market really, really well, so that when it comes to a net, you're breaking even or you're making a profit. And selling Matt O'Reilly and selling Kyogo, and then using all that money to bring in Jota and to bring in Trusty and Ida and Engels, so that you're not actually spending any money, and actually selling some of the guys who are surplus fringe players like Bernabe for £4 million, like Bossen Lawal, like Mikey Johnson, getting £3 million for players like that who are not going to feature. We've done it really, really well, brilliant. And yes, great accountancy, great bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. But I think there does come a point where, in order for you to progress, in order for you to say, well, what is progression? If you win a treble this year and you got to a playoff in the Champions League and you were minutes away from taking Bayern Munich through to extra time in that playoff, right? What is progression? Well, obviously, it's getting out of that playoff and getting into the knockout rounds in the Champions League. What do you need to do? Now, I've already said before, a club like Celtic, even if they spent £200 million, wouldn't win the Champions League. But in terms of progress, what do you want to do? Right, okay, well, I think progress would be, don't sell a player to finance the new players coming in, right? So don't say, well, I'm only going to spend £30 million over the 2 windows if we bring that in. So yes, there's a chance that maybe there's interest in Rio Tati, Nicholas Kuhn, Dyson Maeda. They're the 3 players that you kind of think to yourself, that I'm a bit worried we might lose 1 or 2 of them. But hopefully we do keep them. And Brendan Rodgers won't know as he's standing on pitch side right now. He won't know if he's going to keep the 3 of them.
No.
Hopefully we do. But don't say, well, only if we sell and bring in 25, 30 million quid will we spend that money. Because I think you're standing still then, Chris. I think you're at the point where, and if you are progressing, it's a lot slower, isn't it? So I think whatever the plan is, whatever Brendan Rodgers thinks his plan is, we know one part of that is Kieran Tierney. Everything else is just speculation. Every other player that we're linked with, just speculation at this stage. If he's got another 3 or 4 in mind, you know what? Go and sign those 3 or 4 players. Don't wait until we have a big sale before you go and sign them. For me, that's progress. And by the way, this is a strange thing. You might do that, right? And you might not win the treble next year because in the cup competitions, you could have a bad day, you could have a bad refereeing decision, you could have like what we did with Kilmarnock last season in the League Cup. Doesn't matter how good your team is, that can happen on a one-off game for any team. But in terms of progress in the bigger picture and trying to move forward in Europe, I think that's what we need to do. That's the approach. People might say, look, this is working for us, just, as is, keep it. I don't want to lose a player of Matt O'Reilly and a player of Kyogo's quality every single season, Chris.
No, even though,
no, I know. And then you bring guys in, and it might take them a couple of seasons to settle. People are criticising Ida, people are criticising Engels. I'm criticising Trusty. And it's like, it might take them 18 months to 2 years to settle. Therefore, you're not getting back what you've actually lost, maybe for a season and a half. So I think that would be the progress. Are you confident as a football club, our board would do that though? Because we are very cautious, aren't we?
We are, and I think that's the problem, right? It can't just be about sustain or maintain the status quo, right, and stay dominant as we are in Scottish football, because the benchmark now for me is Europe. As our European progression this year showed that with the right level of investment, we can actually go on and make waves in Europe, and that's exactly what we want to do. So for me, I want to see buy quality and build quality on top of quality. That's kind of the for me, that's got to be the operating model going forward. Buy quality players right now that you absolutely know you're going to use, and then set out a statement of intent which actually allows you to retain your current quality as well to an extent. Now, that's not to say that we'll keep all those top players, but we might we might be able to convince 1 or 2 who otherwise might go by saying, look at the quality we're bringing in here. We're going to make a real push now for the next stage in Europe. We're actually going to go and try and make the next stage, or even just getting to the same level. See if we do that consistently for a couple of years. You're not only getting all the financial rewards, but you're actually making people sit up and take notice. Look at the accolades Celtic got for guys like Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker this year. They loved watching Celtic. They couldn't believe some of the performances and the atmosphere. And I've never seen 2 guys with no affiliation with Celtic at all be so gutted when we actually went out of Europe, and saying that was such a shame because of how we played. This is a club that will capture the imagination. It will capture the hearts of fans all around the world, whether they've supported us for long or short or whatever. So use that, leverage that, build that, back the manager, back long-term success. Not long-term sustainability, long-term success and progress. That's what we need to go and try and build towards. So that's how I want our recruitment model to look. Is let's bring in good, established, known quality within our means, of course, but good, established, known quality, and let's use that alongside the current quality we've got and the quality we can retain to build a competitive European squad.
Well, here's a thing for you, right? So as I say, we're very, very successful in terms of the figures and the accountancy and the way that the club is run in that respect. And everybody appreciates that and everybody knows that. And we've been obviously in a situation 30 odd years ago, where that wasn't the case. And if you've lived through it, yeah, I can understand why there's a bit of caution. There's been clubs who have died because they don't know how to balance the books legitimately. And I get it, but you imagine you've got, let's say, 80 million quid in the bank. Imagine you had only 60 million pound in the bank, but you had a 20 million pound centre forward playing against Bayern Munich, an extra one, because that's what I'm talking about. It's just go that extra bit and get that extra quality into the squad. We wanted Kieran Tierney in January. We wanted Kieran Tierney. We went down to London to sign Kieran Tierney. The deal couldn't be done. And then obviously we had a backup, and that backup was Jeffrey Schlupp to see us through at the end of the season. We'd already agreed to allow Alex Bailly to go out. It didn't work to plan, so we got a backup, right? But with Kieran Tierney, because once you get to a certain stage in Champions League, you're no longer cup tied. So you're looking at all these different things. Would we have been able to add the quality that would have given us that extra margin that you need in these competitions? And I think absolutely. And I don't know how Brendan Rodgers works, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't happy going into the Bayern Munich game a striker down. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been happy with that. Incidentally, I'm continuing to watch the footage at the moment, Chris, because I'm trying to spot Jim Orr. I'm trying to spot Jim.
See if he's at the zone.
Jim is in the media zone today, and he's representing Acsom. And I love Jim. I love having wee ding-dongs and disagreements with Jim as well, because it's refreshing to hear somebody else who has maybe an opposing view, Chris, but is able to create and structure an argument which after the event you think, oh right, okay, I can understand why you're saying that, and you might even start thinking slightly differently. And that for me is the sign of a very good lawyer. I think he'd be a very good lawyer, Jim Orr. He also looks like he could play the part as well in a Hollywood movie. Robert Duvall.
I was going to say Robert Duvall. Yes, he's acting with Robert Duvall. That's whenever I've actually said this, Jim. I said that is who you remind me of, Robert Duvall.
He does. He's got a look at the Robert Duvall about him.
Is it the Acsom consigliere? Is that what they call it?
Consigliere. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a shot at Glory on the shelf behind me. I've never watched it. I've got it on DVD. It was recommended to me by JP Mason. Obviously, Duvall comes to Scotland, and there's a Scottish Cup story and all this. Al McCoist is his star striker. I think they signed him for Celtic at the time. So there's a picture of McCoist in Celtic jersey. Sort of put you off your dinner. So I'm trying to look, for Jim. But what I can see is the James Forrest banner that obviously made it into the stadium, and I found that quite interesting as well, because it was a really nice banner. It would suggest to me that the plans for the Tifo were around James Forrest to pay tribute to Jamesy. So it's a real shame that the Green Brigade weren't able to bring their Tifo game to the party, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I know today we don't want to focus on anything negative, but yeah, that was a shame today, because the Green Brigade, as all the fans do, they bring so much to this club. They bring so much to the profile of the club, and for the club not to be willing or prepared to work with them. And look, it's a two-way street, right? That the Green Brigade, like any, ultra organisation, they can't have things all their own way, right? It can't work that way. There's logistics and there's certain considerations that the board will absolutely have to adhere to. But what we need is open, transparent communication between both parties. And as I said earlier, the board are the structured, professional, organised part of that relationship. So for me, they are the ones who should be looking at, okay, how do we work? How do we collaborate? Yeah, James, absolutely. Well, we did. I mean, first thing we said was with James. But going back to my point, the club should be taking a proactive approach and saying, look, we want to work with you, right? But please understand our position. Here's A, B, and C of the things that we are kind of struggling to accommodate. But here's what we can accommodate. Come and work with us. Come and have a bit of open dialogue and say, what is it you want to do? Okay, we can do 75 or 80% of that. That wee bit there, that's a wee bit controversial. We can't do that. Here's why. Work together. Come up with something that... I'll get no response to that. But come and work with us, and between the two organisations or the two sides and different associations might be involved, come up with something that works for everybody, and really tap into the lifeblood of the club and the supporters the way that the Green Brigade do. Stop the division, because at the moment what the board are, whether intentionally or inadvertently doing, they're creating division. They're setting the Ultras and the Green Brigade aside as a separate entity who shouldn't be viewed as your typical supporter, which is completely wrong. The Green Brigade are just supporters, but they're supporters who have organised and mobilised and do a hell of a lot of good. Don't get everything quite right? They need to take their criticism as well. They don't get everything quite right, but they do a hell of a lot of good, and the club needs to acknowledge that and say, actually, there's a lot that they do that feeds into the values of the club that we supposedly administrate and run. So you want, I just think there's onus on both sides to be open and transparent and have that collaborative dialogue, but I think there's more onus on the club to initiate that.
You know this, Chris, right? I do think you use the word organised. That's what worries the people at our football club. That's what worries the authorities. If you are organised, they get concerned, because if you're able to get organised and get a lot of people on board with the way that you're thinking, and if you have a protest, for example, then that concerns authorities. It always has done, and it always will do. So what they try to do is they try and divide and conquer, and they try to take away the control and the influence that you have as an organised fan group. And that's exactly what's happened today. So when I put that tweet out this morning, people are saying, they can't have free run of the stadium, etc., etc. I'm not saying they can. I'm absolutely not saying that they can. But, clipping their wings like that today is not the way that you go. That you don't do that. It's like, you guys are on the naughty step for 2 banners this season. Let's not beat around the bush. It's the 2 banners. It's the Israeli banner, and it's another banner for a Celtic supporter who, in terms of Vic McFarlane, I'm talking about, right? And Vic McFarlane, people will say, yeah, but that's not got a place at Celtic Park and all this kind of stuff, right? Okay. If that's your thoughts, that's fine. But does that mean that the Green Brigade and all the great work that they have done has been airbrushed out of history because of one banner that the club and some fans probably don't agree with? Well, I don't think it does. I don't think the world works like that. There's no black and white when it comes into that, right? So if, for example, they've shown a banner and the club's not happy with the sentiment of it or the individual who is on the banner, speak about it. So my big thing is, I'm going to very quickly say this before we move on from it. Get an ultra supporter liaison officer in place. Make sure it's not somebody that's already employed by Celtic Football Club. Because, as I say, the association and the associations and the affiliation already pee in the same pot as the board. So that doesn't work. You need somebody who's independent of the club. And that someone might already be part of the ultra group. I think also with fan media, because that's not going the way it should be going. With regards to our collaboration with the football club, I think you need an individual who is actually feeding back on a regular basis what all the other platforms are saying directly to the club. So you've got a voice within the club. And then when it comes to the board and shaking that up, I think you need fan representation. I don't think the fans run the football club at board level, not at a club the size of Celtic. I don't think that would work. But you need representation in there, because otherwise it's us and them. It's constantly us and them. How ironic it was that they handed out white flags and asked the Celtic fans to wave them before the game today. And I know a lot of Celtic fans wouldn't have waved them. I know Kev Graham probably didn't either. He would have used the straw to drink his juice. Now, Redman NYC, you're on the old X platform. Enjoy another trophy day. Always enjoy another trophy day. And Tartan Samurai Gaming, go and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That's Liam Carrigan's gaming channel. Honestly, I can't remember the last time I felt so happy to see us snatch a last-minute draw at home.
Agreed.
See, the thing with Liam's gaming channel, I'm watching all these games I used to play as a kid, and I'm saying to my wee fella, oh, look at this, it's great. And the wee guy's like, that's rubbish. The graphics are terrible, you know what I mean? So it's all about generations.
Nostalgia.
Jim H. Bell, good job, Aberdeen are crap. Come on. We weren't great for 80 minutes today, but it's the bigger picture. Yeah, the bigger picture is that when we need to win, we win. See, when we need to step up, because there's a sense of the same kind of feeling after not beating Rangers in the last game. There was a sense of that, wasn't there? The one each game, you're thinking, well, how can we not beat? When we need to beat them, i.e. a cup final, we beat them. When we need to step up, we do it. Under Brendan Rodgers, he is a mentality monster. Ian Roy, I felt the exact same before the goal came. We could have been playing till midnight and not score a goal. A couple of points for Liam I'm going to bring in before I let Chris go away for his dinner is you mentioned, talking to Lekidu, another commenter, you mentioned the Petrov to Engels comparison, quite a good one. Petrov joined as a young player too. Do you remember how long it took him to settle? Now, Stan Petrov, we've done an event with Stan.
Mm-hmm.
We've done events with, like last night, John Hartson and Chris Sutton, his teammates, and we've done events with Matt O'Neill. And they'll all tell you that Stan Petrov took a long, long time to settle, not just at Celtic, but in Scotland, right? And when you look at even a game that we watched fairly recently, the League Cup final 2000, he is nowhere near the player that he became.
No.
Nowhere near it. He was getting utilised as a right back. He was overweight. He didn't speak the language. He could not settle in Scotland. And look at the player he became. Now, he was a young guy from Bulgaria. We had work permit issues. We really had to work. We had to get a reference from Stoichkov. We really had to work to get that player into the football club. And by God, he became a tremendous player. So, you know, in terms of our first season, if you're going to gauge and analyse, and we'll do this throughout we'll probably dedicate a show to each of the big signings during the pre-season before the games come in. I think, you know, if you're going to give Engels a score out of 10, I'm giving him a 7, maybe a 7.5. I think he's had a good season, Chris.
I think it's a solid season, yeah. I wouldn't say it was a spectacular season. I say it was a solid season, and he certainly contributed to the success. I agree. I think the comparison's a great one. I think to Petrov. And I remember Stan Petrov. I was at that cup final, and you wouldn't have recognised him from the player who subsequently went on to play under Martin O'Neill, not only at Celtic but at Villa as well. He took a long time to settle. And I think if you look back, probably I can't quite remember what we paid for him, but I don't think it wasn't a small sum at that time. But he was on the verge, I think, of not making it at Celtic. So it took a long time for him to come through. So I think, why can't we give a player like Engels the same degree of patience? And I think this is the problem, is that when there's such an expectation to win and perform every single week. And with the increased scrutiny through social media and even what we do, it's so much easier to label a player a failure before he's really had the opportunity to bed himself into the club. And listen, as I say, our club is not for every player. This is not a club where a player for England, for example, or a player for one of the top leagues will walk into and just dominate. You can't. The expectation and the challenge at our football club is a really difficult one. And we've seen off a lot of players. Look at the amount of left backs Greg Taylor's seen off, for goodness sakes. Look at the players who've came, tried for one season and not made it. You can't say Engels hasn't made it. He's been in the team week in, week out. He's contributed assists, he's contributed goals, he's shown his mental proficiency at penalties, something that a lot of the players he plays alongside couldn't do on a consistent basis. So Engels, for me, doesn't have to continually justify his transfer fee. Engels now just has to continue his development and show actually that his development and his career trajectory is on an upwards trend. And if we get 2 or 3 or 4 years out of this player, I think he'll more than pay back that investment because the potential is absolutely there. And look, my opinion on him would probably be different had we not won anything this year, right? That's always it. You always look at the collective fail and you think, what were the reasons why we failed? Well, we've won 2 trophies. We've won the league by multiple points, and we're on the verge of completing yet another treble. What more does the guy have to do?
Well, a lot more to overcome some of the doubters, because, I mean, here we go, right? I've given him a 7 to 7.5, Matty Boy a 5 at most, what's he done. Now, I mean, you can give raw data in terms of 50 appearances, 10 goals, you can do that, right? But you can break down individual performances, and you can look at the Aston Villa game, right? Who do you think were the best 3 teams that we played this year? Was it Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, Aston Villa? Not in that order, but was that the 3 best teams that we played?
I would probably say so, yeah. Based on.
Right. Let's have a look at his figures against these 3 teams, right? Because I've looked at the Aston Villa ones, and he was one of the best players on the park. One of the best players on the park, if you want to look at passes completed, duels won, everything that data analysis is geared towards to say this guy is functioning well in this team, or this guy is not. And actually, man of the matches are meant to be as a result of that. Look at the man of the matches. He got to the point where I think he'd won 6 out of 8, and Callum McGregor was saying, his dad's putting all the votes in. Let's not have a let's not be short-sighted. It's recency bias. If he's had a bad game today, he's a 5. No, maybe he was a 5 today.
Oh yeah, he didn't play
over the season.
He didn't play well today.
Not over the season. Liam, I'm bringing this in as well because you're looking forward, and this is the point I'm making. If Balikwisha is the winger that Brendan Rodgers wants, if Lennon Miller's the midfielder that Rodgers wants, if Fitzgarden is the striker, and we go and buy the 3 guys on top of Tierney, this is what I'm talking about. Might not be the 3 guys, but they're the ones that have been linked. This is what I'm talking about. And you bring them in, and you don't sell. You don't sell. That's the investment I'm talking about here. Now, to bring them in, you're talking probably the same output as this season. You're probably talking 30 million quid.
That's what I was going to say.
Maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to see us spend that sort of sum consistently. I'm not saying we spend 30 million on one player, but I'd like to see us consistently spend around about the 30, 35 million to bring in that established quality. Look, it won't always go right? Because there's so much onus and responsibility on the player to step up and play at this level and prove that they can really, establish themselves in the team. And as I said earlier, lots of players haven't quite made it. Your Lewis Palmers, your Bernabes, etc. They've not made it. So it is important that there's the right level of scouting and the right level of analysis goes into these players. But what you want is 30 million. And then you maybe want to see your fringe players or your players who aren't really making the grade leave. And that maybe only gets you, say 5 or 10 million back. So your outlay really has to be around that 20 million mark to continue to progress. And what you're hoping is by doing that, you're recouping a lot of that and making someone top because you're staying in the Champions League, you're getting further in the Champions League, you're continuing to dominate domestically. So you're getting all the revenue back from your on-field achievements rather than solely relying on, well, we've brought in £30 million worth of players, so we need to make sure that we sell £30+ million of players so we get to make a profit. That will never get you the success on the park. It just won't.
Yeah, I was talking about individual performances, and there's a lot of these. It's not just one game that he played really, really well, but Arne Engels, if you were to look at his performance against Aston Villa, you're looking at, he played 73 minutes, 94% pass accuracy, 7 duels won, which was the best throughout the game, 4 tackles completed, game high, 3 crosses, 3 fouls, 1 interception, 0 times dribble. But I don't think he's a dribbler. I don't think he's a ball carrier.
Not at the moment, no.
He's not that type of player. No. Did the hard yards for Celtic tonight, a fit and disciplined as he's looked all season. There was a number of these performances. This is his first season in the Champions League. Yes, he was poor today, but he's not been poor all season. I'm not buying that. There's been some outstanding displays that, and I've said this before, if he was a 20-year-old when he made his debut for Celtic, he was 20. If he was a 20-year-old coming through the academy, we'd all be sitting here going, oh, he's the next big thing. The last time a player of his age came through our academy and played 50+ games and won a treble, his name was Kieran Tierney. And he did all right. He did okay. So this is my argument. I do feel that Engels gets far more flack than McCowan. Engels has had a better season than Luke McCowan. Does anybody want to argue about that? He's had a much better season than Luke McCowan. There's no question in my mind. But because Luke McCowan's living the dream and there's this whole narrative around it, he gets a free ride, Chris.
Yeah. It's like I said, I don't want to tear down one player to support the point against another. I mean, very pleased with what Luke McCowan's come in and done this season. I think couldn't be happier for him. I think he's contributed meaningfully. But the point is that Engels has been the established first team player, whereas McCowan's been in and out the team. That shows how the manager views the players at the moment in terms of the pecking order. Engels was signed for big money because the manager and the scouting team and his own club valued him at that much, right? I mean, you got to remember, the other team wasn't like, just give us any sum and we'll let this player go. Augsburg wanted to keep Engels, which is why they charged that amount. And Celtic said, well, we want the player, so we're going to go out and play it. Players get no say in that whatsoever, right? Players just he's at one club one day, he's at our club the next day. All he can do is continue to perform on the pitch. But you show me in that entire squad, right, in that entire Celtic squad that we just saw celebrating on the park, You tell me which one of those players has played, at an 8 or 9 out of 10 level every single match this season. There's not one of them. There's not one of them can do it. Casper's not done it from all the way to Kyogo. Didn't do it when he was here. Ida's not done it. Dyson's not done it. As we saw today, he's got days for where he's just off his game. So why is Engels subject to more scrutiny? Because we can't separate two things. One, the player that he was perceived to be brought in to replace, which was Matt O'Reilly, who's a very, very different type of player. And two, the transfer fee.
Transfer fee. I mean, if you want to buy a 20-year-old from the Bundesliga who's played 33 games in the Bundesliga, you're paying that money. Simple as that. That's the market.
It's just football economics. That's what it is. That's where we've got to shop in that market now. That's it.
Yeah, if you want to progress. The fee that Celtic paid for Stan Petrov, incidentally, was £2.8 million. Green tinted. If I had green tinted glasses on, Marty, I would say the board are right for shutting up the Green Brigade, and Jeffrey Sloot's been a great signing. And I've not got green tinted glasses. I think I would say that I'm on the fence. Absolutely, the jury's out on Austin Trusty. We paid £66 million for him. Scales is keeping him out of the team. So it's just my opinion might vary from your opinion, Marty, but it's no green tinted in its in its approach. Some other points before we wrap up. This has turned into a 1 hour session. Sorry, Chris. Lekadu says, "Where are all the Engels and Ida fans?" Yeah, there's one right here. I blame BR for today. He should have gone with the team that won on Wednesday. Embarrassing party dud result today. We need big changes in the summer. That's knee jerk, mate. That's knee-jerk.
Glasses half empty there.
We've just won the league. We've just been given the trophy. We're heading for a treble. Come on now. I don't think big changes. I think Liam Devine put it well. We've already got Kieran Tierney in the door. I think 3 additional quality players. Now, when I say additional, that means if we lose one, it becomes 4. That's just the way it's going to be. So in order for us to progress, I think that's where we're going in the summer. David Boyle, I think Bernardo and Kuhn have played themselves out of the cup final. It's a very, very good conversation. That's a very good discussion piece, and I think leading into the cup final, we'll be talking. I would throw Ida. I would throw Ida, a player that I really like. I'd throw him into that mix as well.
Yep, I think so.
They were hooked off within 10 minutes of half time. Bernardo, Ida, and Kuhn. They weren't good today. We'll see what happens on cup final day. And finally, Ryan Moore, 12 corners, only 1 chance on target. On the 5th minute, we need serious upgrades in the summer. Well, Ryan, enjoy the rest of your day, my friend. Acsom will be down at the street party. We will be flying drones. We will be sharing that. I can't wait for that footage, by the way. I really cannot wait for that footage. Let's hope everybody's safe. That's the big thing.
I was going to say that. I think that has to be paramount. As much as this has been a brilliant day, great title celebration. Hope everybody's a fantastic day. But please, for the love of God, just stay safe. There was a great point made by Joe Hamilton, one of the regular viewers, and he says, "Don't take the bait, just celebrate." And I thought that's actually a great way of looking at it. Just go and enjoy yourself, but be in your bed. Show the world why we're the best support in the world. Right? Everybody's setting us up for failure today with the circumstances around the street party. Go and prove them wrong. Go and prove them wrong. But fundamentally, I really want everybody to go home and go home safe.
Yeah, the James Forrest song is going to stick, isn't it?
It is.
And I mentioned the other day there that as soon as I heard it, it put me in mind of a certain individual who had passed, and it's because of the Jimmy Johnston connection. Obviously, that was wee Jinky's song, Jimmy Johnston on the Wing. But it was pointed out to me, rightly so, that Johnny Doyle was also subject to that song when Johnny came in to the football club. Both of those players have passed on, and our memories, our thoughts and prayers are always with their families. Jimmy Johnston and Johnny Doyle. We've got another legend who has picked up the baton of that song, and it's James Forrest, and that was tremendous to hear that ringing around Celtic Park today. Go and enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch another title being lifted by our favourite football club, and it's a club that we never ever tire of talking about. We might disagree, but we never tire talking about it. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you once again to Chris McElwain for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.